What's up, buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your beautiful host, Brian McWilliams. Just tucking away a flag here. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome you people that are actively seeking the truth and not falling into some sort of bizarre whirlpool of madness, which seems to be what's happening throughout the leftward sphere of our universe today. And I thank you for actually having open minds. Now, if you want to have an even more open mind and open wallet, of course, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com to get all of our bonus content, daily rants, bonus shows like the Degenerate Gamblers and Meme Wars, and much more. So, what am I talking about when I say that people are rejecting outward truths? Well, where do we start? Where do we start? I mean, literally, right now, you have the Health and Human Services Department, which, of course, is run by RFK Jr., who the left has gone out of their way to demonize, call a kook, a psychopath, and completely belittle any of his achievements. Now, to remind everybody, RFK Jr. was a very rabid leftist for a very long time, was on the left fighting for climate issues, fighting for, you name it, you got it, for the left-hand side of things, and actually winning these things in litigation, right? They want to dismiss this man as though he has absolutely no standing from a science perspective, from an intellectual perspective, from a governmental perspective. Ignore everything he says. He should be disregarded. The man, for whatever you think about him, actually has had quite a bit of success litigating different issues in regards to, especially, climate issues, food safety issues. Now, RFK Jr., of course, has come around on a lot of the climate things. And he credits COVID for that awakening, right? Seeing how the government lied to us, how different data was cut and sliced and diced to present a complete and total lie to the American population as far as the efficacy of the vaccine, the danger of COVID as a virus, whether or not this thing has impacted pregnant women, whether it impacted blood clotting, etc. And of course, it's now come out that Pfizer hid a lot of that data, which has spurred a lot of lawsuits, not only here in the US, but also internationally. But coming back around to what I was saying earlier, when it comes to safety of products, actually, RFK Jr. has had a lot of success going after companies like Monsanto in the past for various infractions that have actually endangered the human population or been misrepresented. So he has a history of being able to analyze something, and provide analysis, take that into a sphere where it should be looked at legitimately, rationally, not having a partisan perspective, and has won court cases on this. So he's coming from a position of proven success. So what does he do? Well, he says, look, we want to get to the bottom of what is causing a spike in autism. And yes, there are questions around that, whether or not vaccines have something to do with it, whether or not a scheduling of vaccines and having so many vaccines clustered together all at once, 9 to 10 times the amount that was given just 30 years ago, and seeing a corresponding rise. Are there other factors in that? Are there factors like, a massive amount of diagnoses pointing to autism that might not have been diagnosed before? We just write somebody off as being a little bit hyperactive or being a bit of a spaz or being a little bit special. Yes, that's a component. But at the same time, when he says, look, we've looked into the link between using acetaminophen, and people are saying Tylenol specifically, it's acetaminophen, right? You can get it anywhere now, during the pregnancy process, and saying that this can lead to developmental disorders because it leads to a buildup of toxicity. It doesn't help, you can't get rid of certain things that are coming through your body. You can't, process certain toxins and get them out. There's a number of different factors that went into this. But saying, look, we found a link and this could be a potential cause. This, by the way, latest HHS announcement and study is also backed up by a Harvard study. Yes, Harvard, the same place that liberals look to as the god of all things rational that must be trusted, right? The epitome of science and education. These people will now say that Harvard study, which came out from a known doctor, this is years ago. This is, I believe, 5 years ago. Well, you know what? Oh, that should be ignored as well because we hate RFK Jr., we hate Donald Trump, we hate quote unquote anti-science. Yes, hey, the weather report's here. What's up, Bruce? Yeah, exactly. Trust the science. Well, they refuse to trust the science. So you now have circumstances that have arisen where even Tylenol has posted on its own feed. And by the way, coincidence or not, 2 years ago, Tylenol actually split off from the parent company. I can't remember if it was Johnson & Johnson or Bayer, who I can't remember exactly who owned Tylenol as a brand, but Tylenol split off. Maybe that's simply for cost measures. Maybe that's simply that it made sense from a financial standpoint for the company. I don't know. But it is interesting that when this Harvard study came out, again, this is several years ago, they looked at it and said, yeah, maybe just for the purposes of protecting our parent company from lawsuits, potential bans, let's break it off into its own thing for safety's sake. But Tylenol, just on their Twitter feed today, posted that they've actually never recommended Tylenol be taken while women are pregnant with a child in utero. And that's where this connection between acetaminophen and autism actually comes from. It's when women have a baby in utero and you are taking Tylenol, which is, by the way, prescribed as the thing to take to pregnant women. I know our doctor said to my wife, you can take Tylenol, but that's all you can take. Don't take ibuprofen, don't take whatever. You can take acetaminophen. And you know what? When you're going through and you have aches and pains as a woman, your back hurts, your stomach hurts, your everything hurts, your head hurts, everything sucks, right? You're taking a good amount of Tylenol, and especially if you're being told this is the safe thing to take. So now we have this study come out. You have the previous study come out. And when it's announced, instead of women saying, you know what, I should take this to heart, even Tylenol is saying that we've never recommended women use any of our products while pregnant. Instead of saying, let's take a step back. Let's say critically thinking wise, right? Let's use our critical thinking brains and say, what is the risk benefit here? What's the risk reward? To me, trying to cut back on Tylenol and only take it if I'm in exceptionally amount of high pain, right? Okay, maybe you need it at certain times, great. Instead of, say, taking it all the time, which a lot of women are doing for those constant aches and pains, instead of saying it makes logical sense to protect my child from a potential link. And let's not forget, by the way, there are links between drinking when you have a pregnancy, right? Smoking when you have a pregnancy. But these, similarly, it doesn't mean that every child's going to end up with some sort of disability. It doesn't mean that your kid's gonna be born with their heart on the outside of their body all the time. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're gonna have alcohol syndrome, because you drank with the child in utero, unless you're doing it all the time. And even then, it's still not guaranteed. But what do women do when they're pregnant? They say, okay, you know what? It's not worth the risk for me to continue to smoke or use drugs or use alcohol all the time. Once in a while is okay. And doctors will even say that you can have a glass of wine once in a while. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. Yes, exactly. Moderation, risk management. So you would expect a rationally critical thinking mind. And we're being told that liberals are the party of science and leftists, they believe in science, right? We've seen the signs on their lawns that Black Lives Matter, and they believe in science in this house, and hate has no home here. Well, hate certainly has a home because these women hate Donald Trump and hate RFK Jr. so much that they are willing to ignore a risk factor and, in fact, embrace it and triple, quadruple down on it. How do I know this? Well, I've seen all the posts on social media, and I've seen some of the most despicable, psychotic posts I've ever seen. Let me share with you real quick here. Let me share my screen. Here you go. I've got two to share with you here. Now, let me cue this up. There we go. Come on. Let me get it on the screen here for you. This is a very pregnant woman. And what's she doing? Oh, yeah. Gleefully gobbling Tylenol just to stick it to Donald Trump and RFK Jr. Let's see. Let's watch her. Oh. I got to mute this so I don't get dinged on YouTube with the volume. This chick's dancing around. She's got 3 different types of Tylenol. She's now gleefully looking at the camera, putting them in her mouth, chugging water while dancing with her pregnant child in her stomach. This is a special kind of sickness. Call it Tylenol TDS, as I did in this episode. This Tylenol TDS, I'm going to play another one for you too, because this is rampant. I've seen 5 to 7 of these videos online, and I can tell you for a fact, if I'm seeing 5 to 7 of these online, that probably means that there's a lot more women that are doing it that I'm just not seeing. Let me share another one of these videos for you from this absolute sickness, this Tylenol TDS affliction, which, as I mentioned, it takes a certain type of unbelievable dementia to not only think that this does anything, but to put your child at risk, at a higher risk of autism, because you just don't like somebody. Here you go. This says, me popping Tylenol while pregnant, because what the fuck is the government going to do about it? What a great answer. There you go. Oh, I got to mute this one too, so I don't get dinged. Here we go. Here she is. Up, showing us gleefully popping Tylenol. Down they go. Wow. Way to own the Republicans, girl. Way to put your child. Can you imagine the hatred you would feel towards yourself if your child ends up with autism? Now, again, this is not a direct correlation. You know, I think it's going to be very hard to prove because of all the again, the factors I talked about externally, diagnosis wise, factors like vaccines, factors like whatever external conditions might exist within the sphere of our food intake, the byproducts that are being added to all of our foods, the preservatives, the dyes. All these things could also have an impact. And it's interesting to see, by the way, the autism rates in the North America and European nations compared to Russia, China, the rest of, Africa. They don't seem to have it. Maybe it's a diagnosis issue. Maybe it's a food issue. Maybe it's a vaccine issue. Maybe it's a Tylenol issue. The point is to do this just to show them that you're not going to take it. You don't believe this fascist, and risk your own child is a level of sickness that I didn't think I would ever see. Because throughout even COVID, the one thing you saw liberals say, okay, we've had enough, we can't take it anymore. And this is with a trans thing as well. When you go after people's kids, when it's your child, your genetic lineage that is at risk, you're going to say enough's enough. The COVID vaccine was a perfect example of this. Children did not get it. Some people gave it to them. Okay. Some people gave it to their kids. Even here in Los Angeles, where I live, in a den of liberal retardation, a lot of people I talk to went, I'm not giving my kid that vaccine. I'm simply flat out not doing it. And you saw this bear out nationally in vaccine rates for kids that were 5 and under. People in mass just said, we're not doing it. It's not worth the risk. This is my kid. I'm not going to inject them with some experimental, vaccine that I'm told does this, this, and this. And yet everybody I know is getting sick, and we're seeing adverse reactions. Similarly, with the trans issue, while you're seeing some nutballs that completely went down the road, right? And they were lied to by the medical establishment. They were lied to by these BS studies that have now completely been retracted to say that you had to convert your kid if they identified as this or that, right? Or else they're going to kill themselves, or, God, the outcomes, or it's reversible. Don't worry, you're not doing the wrong thing. The majority of us looked at it and went, this is bonkers. I'm going to protect my kid. And that means not allowing them to make a decision that will change their lives forever at the age of 8. When we see this, these kids can't have a say. They have absolutely no power to control what that psychotic parent is doing to increase their risk. And like I said, it does not matter to me whether or not you outwardly hate RFK Jr., whether or not you think that whatever he says is nonsense or not. If somebody says, we've done this study and this is a thing that we think contributes to autism, you just as a parent should say, let me cool it for a bit. Let me pull it back. Instead, they're fucking gobbling Tylenol like demons. I mean, my God, I'm not a religious person at all. At all. But when I see that, it's like looking into the face of evil. And I know that these people had their minds scrambled by their education, by their social media, by the algorithm, by their, I'm sure, liberal bubble, by people in blue cities, by horrible politicians, by the media. I mean, I know they've demonized RFK Jr. so much that these people think that he can't be trusted. So that's on them too. But this is pure evil and so unbelievably stupid. On that same note, if you want to talk about more pure evil, Charlie Kirk's memorial just happened. I did not watch it, to be clear. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad people went. I'm glad people were moved by it. Obviously, I've talked a lot about Charlie Kirk. I think what happened was horrible, but I'm not going to sit and watch it. At the same time, I'm definitely not going to go and protest it. I mean, I named this episode the Leftboro Baptist Church for a very good reason, because the only people that were evil enough to go and protest at a funeral for someone that they didn't like or had a moral objection to were the pieces of human garbage from the Westboro Baptist Church who would go and protest gay funerals because they thought that that was a sin. That is something that was universally agreed upon to be despicable. Any side of the aisle agreed this is despicable behavior. This is showcasing the worst possible aspects of humanity. This is showcasing brainwashing, to the other side of things. When you're brainwashed enough that you're going to go protest a person's funeral because they have a different lifestyle than yours, and your Bible says that it's not okay, well, you're fucked up in the head. You have drank the Kool-Aid, and sadly not the kind that's poisoned. These leftist pieces of garbage have been kicking over memorial services, destroying, shrines that have been made, going and protesting outside of this man's funeral. People are going to grieve. A man who was shot in front of his children for speaking his mind and engaging in open debate and kindly. And it's been very interesting and very illuminating to see how many people that were on the left or in the center, for that matter, have looked into Charlie Kirk and been like, holy crap, I've been lied to. These people completely presented me with a nonsense version of reality. They cherry pick items out of context and then pretend that this guy was a racist and a bigot and a transphobe and everything else, hated gays. None of that is true. Engage them calmly, welcoming, kindly. And then you see these people protesting at a funeral. Do they think it's going to help? I mean, I think the same thing when I see these morons who glue themselves or throw, chicken soup or tomato soup on precious works of art or stop traffic. What do you think the reaction is going to be? I mean, I know your brains can't comprehend this. You're evil, media-addled, drug-addled, God knows what brains. And by the way, I love some good drugs. Don't get me wrong here. But to think that this is somehow forwarding or saving society, that takes a new level of derangement. And that's where I guess it comes into play, too, in my mind, because we had, John Odermatt at Finding Freedom had on, and I'm blanking on his name, but he had somebody who runs a crowd for hire company. And what we do see a lot here is crowds for hire. So who knows if these protesters were legitimately insane protesters? I know that there were a lot of people that we saw videos of protesting, quote unquote, protesting Charlie Kirk that were just simply fentanyl out of their brains, clearly been paid to be there. So maybe these protesters were there. And they've been funded by God knows what psychotic, horrible left-wing WEF globalist organization to stir up hatred within the population. But even that doesn't make sense, because all you're doing by showcasing that level of hatred, that level of a complete lack of humanity, sympathy, empathy from the quote-unquote party of peace, the party of empathy, calling somebody a Nazi to say after he's dead and after everybody's waking up to the lies that have been told. It doesn't help you. There's no way in hell. Like, I do public relations for a living. There's no chance that helps your cause. If anything, all it does is galvanize people against the left even further. Similarly, Jimmy Kimmel being out there, and he just got his show back, right? We'll talk about that more in the middle. But Jimmy Kimmel going out there with his insensitively stupid remarks that the left somehow, wrote off as a joke, was not a joke, and tried to defend, similarly, does not help your cause. We saw Stephen Colbert. I gave him credit. Stephen Colbert, for the first time in 10 years, said something rational. We came out in 2 separate shows and said, this is not acceptable. Political violence is not acceptable. Good job, Colbert. You read the room accurately. You might have gotten everything else wrong in the last 10 years, and you saw your show got canceled. But you got that one right. These Leftboro Baptist Church psychopaths that are thankfully, and I said this before, and I'll say it again, thankfully being called out, documented, and ostracized from society has to happen. It has to happen. I want to re-emphasize the fact that as a civilized society, we cannot accept people openly celebrating assassination and then trying to assassinate the man all over again by protesting his vigil and his memorial service where his wife, his children, his parents are inside grieving. These people are everything that they hate. And what they hate is a lot. To imagine somebody that can be more hate-filled than the people that protest Charlie Kirk's memorials, that are going out there and kicking them over, who are getting expelled from school, who are getting canceled and fired from their jobs. To imagine somebody that's more hateful than that, it takes a lot. The only person more hateful than that, I guess, is the guy that pulled the trigger. And the only reason, and I believe this fully, the only reason a lot of these people haven't pulled a trigger is because they're too cowardly to do so. It's not because they have a better moral standing. It's not because they believe that you should have free speech. It's not because they believe that human beings have a right to live and thrive and that you shouldn't kill as a matter of course, because as a society, we cannot accept that you can murder somebody for disagreeing with you or living a different lifestyle than you. Unless that person happens to be a child rapist. In that case, I'm totally fine with putting a bullet in their head. Oh, just despicable. Really unbelievably despicable. A couple of things, by the way, before I move on to Jimmy Kimmel, is I know a lot has happened this week. I was trying to figure out, what do I want to talk about? Oh, good. My computer's gone into the slow mode. Wonderful. I was trying to figure out what I want to talk about today, because Donald Trump obviously just addressed the UN. There's a lot to unpack there. He just came out and said that the Ukraine should try to take back the areas of Russia that were lost, which is a complete deviation from his earlier statements about trying to find a peaceful solution, and we're not going to back to Ukraine anymore. So that's worrisome. But we will talk about that on Politics tomorrow, our new show. Of course, Politics is our every other week Friday show here on Lions of Liberty Network. Also, it has its own feed if you're interested in that. We'll talk about that on Politics. There's a couple other things that popped up as well that were just, these major stories that I can't get into today. So just don't worry. We will address those. Stay tuned. But on the topic of hate, on the topic of free speech, you'll notice that these protesters were not gunned down outside of Charlie Kirk's memorial. They very well might be fired, right? They very well might be found out. They very well might be canceled. But they were not arrested and shot upon. They were not beaten. They were not, their freedom of speech was respected. As despicable, as utterly despicable as it might be, nobody shot any of those people in the head. So I just want to point that out. Kimmel has returned to the airwaves, despite the fact that the left had said this was a free speech issue, which it was not. It was absolutely a reasonable response by ABC, considering that Nexstar and Sinclair had both said we're pulling the show. And by the way, Nexstar and Sinclair, which have roughly 25 to 28% of the stations of ABC across the country, have refused to air Kimmel's show. They have not welcomed it back. They will preempt the show, which is really interesting. They drew a line in the sand here, which I didn't expect. Once the statement was made and the message was sent to Kimmel and to ABC corporate that this was not acceptable to have somebody go on there in the wake of a man being publicly assassinated and then completely lie to your audience about what was said, completely lie to your audience about the reality of the situation. And to reiterate, if anybody's not familiar with it, I'm sure you are, in brief, Kimmel went out there and said that the assassin, Ty Robinson, was, essentially a MAGA operative, and that this was, the GOP was trying to get political points and tell everybody that he was anything but a MAGA operative, which is completely lying. It's saying that this guy was working or, in conjunction with a conservative movement who shot Charlie Kirk was ridiculous. It was despicable. It was purely led by Jimmy Kimmel's own hatred for the right and for Charlie Kirk personally. So what happened to him was well-deserved. And while unfortunately, and I said this, on the show previously, I don't think the FCC should be giving out fucking airwave licenses to anybody. But as it exists, they do have the right to pull it back. I don't think they should. And I don't think that, the head of the FCC should have made remarks that fanned the flames of the liberals, oh my God, democracy. But ABC's reaction was completely warranted. Completely warranted. People have been fired for much less. And again, people made the very pertinent points about Roseanne Barr being fired for much less. And of course, we find out right after Kimmel goes on the air, and we'll talk about his reaction in a moment, that YouTube and parent company Google have been, of course, pressured by the Biden administration to censor YouTube channels that didn't go along with their preferred point of view. Now, the Lions of Liberty, by the way, have been shadow banned on YouTube for a decade. YouTube has gone after us. It has demonetized us. It has nerfed all of our views, all of our reach. So if you're watching this, please hit the notify button. Tell a friend to watch this show, because we have been fighting with them for a decade. We had to fight so hard just to be able to run ads on our show. And only in the last couple of years have we been able to finally, monetize the channel, because what they would do is go through all of our content from years and years, because we've been doing this for a long time. And I can't tell you how frustrating it's been to watch other people in the space start YouTube channels that blow up as we are completely denied that possibility until very recently. But they would go through our content. They would find something that flagged whatever government mandate or YouTube term of service they wanted to invent. Then they would demonetize us. They would remove the content. They'd give us a strike. Then we couldn't post anything for 10 days. Rinse and repeat. Ad nauseum. Rinse and repeat. This happened for fucking 5-10 years. And now we find out that Google's admitting it. Well, yeah, we were completely screwing people. So I'm sorry if I don't cry any tears for Jimmy Kimmel being taken off the air for 2 days for saying something heinous on a public broadcasting network, while the rest of us have been targeted, have been, physically, well, not physically, but financially harmed, have been, our free speech taken away from these platforms, from what's supposed to be a firewall between government and private industry. And we find out that all along, YouTube has been playing along, just like Facebook did, just like X did, just like all these social media platforms did. And yet liberals are going to say that Jimmy Kimmel was the defining line in what's wrong and what can't be allowed in our society. Get the fuck out of here. And of course, the man's back on the air. He was off for 2 days? He's back on the air. And he's on the air crying, because Kimmel loves to cry. And he's crying about how, I would never make a joke about a young man who was killed. Well, you did. You did. You made a joke at the end of it. You made fun of Donald Trump's reaction to it. You certainly didn't seem too broken up about it when you said to everybody that a MAGA had assassinated him with a completely straight face and talked about how the GOP was getting political points off of Jimmy. You certainly didn't seem too choked up about it. Crocodile tears from a man who has lost all sense of morality. And this is what I'd like to point out. Just like these psychopath women who are eating Tylenol, just like the pieces of shit who are out protesting in front of Charlie Kirk's Memorial, these are the same people who will go out there and weep and cry for COVID. And of course, Jimmy Kimmel also, don't forget, told people that didn't get the COVID shot, he wanted them to die and be denied access to hospitals. So this man who has no moral qualms about wishing death upon his enemies, or people that he perceives as enemies because he's bought into and drank the Kool-Aid of the DNC talking points and government narratives and whatever else, whatever little circles of influence that he has either paid to be within or is so desperate for relevance that he has to stay within till he's lost his fucking mind. He'll cry over issues that are in fact solvable. He'll cry over issues that in fact Republicans and libertarians and everybody supports, and pretend that it's somehow one of our faults that it's happening. And in the meantime, he'll go out there and cry crocodile tears because now he's sorry because it's risked his standing while in his heart of hearts, still perfectly happy that it happened, perfectly happy to make the joke. And from the reports that came out, Kimmel, the reason he was suspended was because he refused to back down and apologize initially. He wanted to double down on what he had said previously. Just despicable. But you know what? Here's the white bill. These people, just as they did with COVID, just as they've done with the entire trans thing, just as the education system is showcasing, they've exposed themselves for what they are. And everything they have done, everything the DNC has done, everything these crazy leftist, globalist, anti-humanity nut bars have done has further eroded the trust that the population has in anything they say, the relevance of anything they have in our cultural lexicon, in our dialogue. These people are being pushed into a corner, and we're going to fence it off, and we're just going to ignore them. That's what's happening here. And they don't get it. They've lost them. And this is how you know this is a true level of dementia. Trump dementia syndrome. It is a real thing. These people have lost their minds. They have no context for reality. It's like Scott Adams had a great, a two movies scenario where part of the population is in fact watching a completely different movie. And they do not overlap at all. I guess it's kind of like when you put on your 3D glasses, some of us are looking through both lenses. Some of us have one eye closed and they're not seeing the different dimensions that exist within our reality. They're seeing one small blue dimension. It's kind of funny now I think about this. The red and the blue sides of the 3D glasses. Those of us that are looking with wide open eyes, us, let's say us libertarians, us critical thinkers, are seeing both sides of that spectrum. We're seeing the full three dimensions of our reality surrounding us. We're able to create. We're seeing depth of arguments. We're not simply seeing one flat version of reality without a capability of seeing the other side. And that's where these people exist. And that's where they live. And that's why you're seeing this. That's why you're seeing these people protest. That's why you're seeing Jimmy Kimmel say what he says. This is why you're seeing the DNC crash and burn. They simply cannot understand the reality around them. And so they have no answers. And they have no moral qualms about what they do. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining me here on Mean Age Daydream. Don't forget, we've got 5 wonderful shows. Again, politics will be on tomorrow. But if you do think of it, please, like I said, we've been shadow banned forever. Hit notify, tell a friend, like the channel. Make sure you get to see our content. Support us on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and X and all that good stuff. And we put out a lot of shorts lately, which are getting a lot of traction. So take those and put them in your pocket. Carry them around on your phone. All right. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network, and from Mean Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. I will talk to you.